Okay, let's get started. It's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock on the West Coast, 5 p.m. in Paris and Waldorf. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the second edition of the SAP Fiori-side chat, and we are very excited to have you join us today again. My name is Eugen Winschel, and I'm from the SAP User Experience Product Management team, and I'm joined by my co-host Keith Fisher, who is sitting in Vancouver this morning.
Good morning.
And our presenters and colleagues, Peter Spielvogel, with me here in the Bay Area. You see it's a beautiful snowy day. And Stefan Engelhardt, who is in the German mountains. I will give each a moment to quickly say hello to you.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here and talk a little bit about SAP Fiori elements and a little bit about SAP Fiori tools this morning.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the techie part alongside Peter, and I'm a development architect in the Fiori Elements team.
Yep, and I'm Keith. I'm part of the co-host with Eugen and the rest of the team, so welcome.
Yeah, and Pete, as Peter mentioned already, like today's topic actually is on the Fiori-side chat is Fiori Elements and Fiori tools. And we will, Peter will be doing together with Stefan, a short presentation, and we wanted to make it an interactive session and discussion. So please, at any time when you have questions, raise them. Don't wait until the slides are over. This is actually a chat. This should be highly interactive. So please, please ask questions at any time. It's purely about the conversation, and therefore, please, let's make it interactive and highly engaging. The objective of the Fiori-side chat, as we introduced last time, is we want to share best practices on SAP Fiori and everything related to UX. And it's important for us that you actually get to talk with us, and we can talk about the topics with you that are hot topics and of interest for you. And that's why we said we want to create this chat session for you, especially during this situation where we don't have the possibility to meet in person. We said like this is the best option to meet in virtual in person, and we want to make it a true conversation. And therefore, it's an interactive style, open to everyone, and therefore we want to make it really, really interactive with all the conversations going. And so before we get started, we wanted to set a few ground rules, and I'll hand over to Keith for that.
Well, sure. I get to be the rule master here. So yeah, as Eugen has said, and has been the theme all along here, right? This is really a focus on SAP and SAP UX topics. This is not a sales session, and we're not collecting information. We're not trying to sell you anything, right? This is really an exchange of information. We do understand we're part of a larger ecosystem, and we have partners joining with us and the rest, but just please from promoting third-party tools or services here. The virtual introductions have started in the chat window, so please join us. You'll see a chat, you'll see a little chat icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Please click on it, and it's highlighted usually in orange. Click on it and open it up and let us know who you are. The video and microphone settings there are actually in the lower left. You should see either an audio or a mute button and a video button as well if you are promoted to being a panelist. And if you'd like to join, just let us know in the chat, and we'd be happy to add you to the video as well. So and finally, this is a informal conversation, so please make sure we keep things fun and light and professional. And it is recorded, and we will put it on the SAP Fiori wiki, which we'll share later. And that we link in the chat window, and we'll put that in the link very shortly.
And if you want to put your city where you're dialing in from to the chat, along with your name and company, that'd be great, so we can see what sort of coverage we have around the world with that.
Yeah, and I think if you go to the next slide, then we'll show you the chat instructions here. So as Eugen said at the beginning, please ask questions in the chat. We are monitoring it. We may not respond to it verbally, but we'll respond to it at some point through the session. And again, ask if you want to be a panelist to speak. And let's make it interactive and fun. So with that, I'll turn it over to Peter and Stefan for the highlighted sessions of today. And Peter, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks a lot, Keith and Eugen, for having us. Today, Stefan and I are going to talk about accelerating Fiori app development with SAP UI5, SAP Fiori Elements, and SAP Fiori Tools. We're going to start at a high level, and if the questions get deeper, we'll take the conversation wherever you want. Stefan and I are part of the SAP UX engineering team, which is globally distributed. We've got locations in Palo Alto, where I'm based, Waldorf, where Stefan is based, also a large team in Bangalore, Ireland, and a few other locations. So before we get into the content, we want to have a quick sense of where all of you are with your journey. So Eugen is going to pop up a poll. We want to know, what's your experience with SAP Fiori Elements? Do you have more than 50 apps in production? 11 to 50, 6 to 10, 1 to 5. You started experimenting with it. You have no experience with it, but you've heard of it, or this is a brand new topic to you. So if you can put up the poll there for everyone, Eugen, we can get a sense of where everyone is.
Can you guys see it? Should be up.
I don't see it. No.
Don't see the poll.
No
Oh,
poll.
okay.
I see the slide, but not a poll.
Okay.
The panelists don't see it, but it appears that Volker does see it. So I guess that means yes.
Okay, I'm not going to be able to see the results. So if you want to read them off, that would be great. I know if anyone from SAP is clicking, the answer is number 1 up there, more than 50 apps in production. As we'll get to later, SAP Fiori Elements is one of the main tools that we use internally to build Fiori apps for S/4HANA.
Yeah, it looks like nobody's seeing the poll. So if people just want to type in their answer to the into the chat, that's fine. You know, let us put your answer in there. Wow, that's great, Peter. You got 50 apps in production. So yeah, from the screen there, go ahead and just type in what your number is, and we'll do a rough calculation here without technology.
Or with the original technology, the original calculator, true. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave this up for another couple of seconds so people can type that in. And I'm sure some of you have seen the news article about the app that SAP built for the German government to help bring its citizens back into the country. And we pulled that together in a fairly short time frame using SAP UI5 for the app that the citizens used. And on the admin side, we used SAP Fiori Elements to do that because it was just a fairly structured approach. And we'll talk a bit more about that. So other than SAP people, were there any ones in the answers there?
Yeah, we have Peter. Peter from Mindset has more than 50, but the majority of people are actually in the experimenting or no experience with it yet phase. So,
Okay.
And that's great. So I think this session is precisely for you, and we have a good mix across the board.
All right, perfect. Okay, so we're going to cover a bunch of things today. You'll have access to the recording afterwards if we go by quickly, but there's really 3 main things that I'd like you to take away from today's session. Number 1 is that Fiori Elements accelerates app development. There's a lot of ways to build Fiori apps, and there's a lot of richness in the SAP UI5 framework to do that. And using Fiori Elements will let you create these apps more quickly. And the second thing is that Fiori Elements allows you to make these apps consistent across the board. So as you make a series of apps, as we do at SAP, we want them to all look consistent, whether you're in a finance domain or a purchasing domain or a sales domain. These apps need to look consistent regardless of which team is building it. And finally, the tooling within Fiori Elements allows you to scale very nicely. You can cover roughly 80% of the scenarios. So let me tell you a short story about the origin of Fiori Elements, which will then kind of reinforce why we got to this point with the product. So if we look back roughly 10 years ago when we started, or 7, 8 years ago when we started our SAP Fiori journey, the company brought together a set of developers, designers, and architects, one core team of experts from around the world to work on the first round of Fiori apps. And you may remember those 25 apps that we rolled out at Sapphire, I think back in 2013 or 2014. And so we created those, and everyone was happy. Yeah, this is the right track for transforming the user experience. Then we took this team of 10, and then we sent them back to their home bases so they could recreate this process with their own development teams and really scale this and go from 25 to 50 and so on. As we started going through that, we had some interesting observations. Some teams were faster than others in terms of rolling out the apps. Although everyone had the same specification, the results were not necessarily 100% consistent. Some people interpreted things in different ways and the apps didn't look quite the same. And then on the performance side, some teams wrote apps that were really fast and other teams wrote apps that were not quite as fast. So we said, okay, sending the experts out is one way to scale, but we need to build a set of tooling, a set of instrumentation that lets people do this in a much more repeatable way. And that repeatable way is in fact SAP Fiori Elements. So it's that accelerator. It has the cookie cutter approach, so you can build consistent apps across the board. And it's not a silver bullet that's going to let you create every app like that, but most of the time, and our own experience shows that it works in roughly 80% of the app development scenarios. And if for some reason it doesn't fit, we've got other solutions that allow you to do that. So there's a number of different ways you can obtain the SAP Fiori user experience. So you can use or adapt what we give you from SAP out of the box. And there's a number of Fiori apps in the app reference library. If you're running the latest version of S/4HANA, you have access to a couple of thousand apps, which is great. If you're on ECC, there's a few hundred. If you want the Fiori experience, but don't necessarily want to rebuild everything, and the transaction code has what you want in the SAP GUI, you can use screen personas to transform that. That's a topic for another day. Today, we're going to focus on developing new apps using SAP Fiori Elements and SAP Fiori Tools. So that's going to be the 80%. And if that doesn't meet your exact needs, we have other tooling that you can use to build freestyle apps. Now, when we talk about Fiori in general, the Fiori design system is really independent of the technology. When we first rolled out Fiori, any Fiori app was inherently an SAP UI5 based app. Now we have our iOS toolkit, our Android toolkit. Again, another topic for another day. We're going to focus on building SAP UI5 apps. And when we say it's a Fiori app, it means it has 5 core attributes. It's role-based, designed for a single role within the organization. So not like the old transaction codes where you have something like a VO3 sales order lookup and someone in sales is looking at it for one thing, someone in the shipping department needs something else, someone in billing needs something else. In the Fiori paradigm, each of those roles would have their own app that would provide exactly the information that that person is looking for. Fiori apps are inherently adaptive. They run on any device. That's one of the beauties of SAP UI5. You write once and run it anywhere. They're simple, they're coherent, they look consistent across everything else that we're doing, and that's important as we go. There's the polling. Nice. Last of all, we really want these apps to be delightful. So let me move this off the screen. Over here. So with that as a background, Today's agenda, we're going to talk about a little bit about how SAP UI5 is the foundation for Fiori elements, how Fiori elements provide some predefined page types. I will show you what I'm talking about there. Then we'll go through a quick exercise of building apps with Fiori elements and give you some tips to start your journey. So before I get into the slides, is there anything from the Q&A that I should be aware of before we go into it?
Not yet, Peter.
Okay, so let me switch here and go to a demo. You can see the demo screen now?
Yes.
My browser?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So typically your starting point for SAP Fiori is going to be the Fiori Launchpad, as you see here. And I'm going to click on a tile for a procurement overview. And this page is a Fiori Elements application. This is an overview page. It gives me an overview of everything related to that purchasing scenario. So I've got a list of suppliers, the spend per supplier, some different contacts, a whole bunch of different applications. And if I click on one of them, so I'll click here, this is going to take me to another page type within Fiori Elements. And this is a list report. And the nice thing about a list report is all of this formatting, the table layout, the highlights on the screen, the ability to select objects, the filter bar on the top, the searching, the navigation back and forth, all of that comes to you out of the box with Fiori Elements. So this is a list report, probably the most common page type that we have within Fiori Elements in terms of usage. And a list report is always paired with an object page. So we'll very often say list report object page, or you might see LROP, list report object page. And if I click on one of the objects in here, it brings up the object page. And this is a collection of information about this particular object. You can have graphics embedded on the page, as you see, and lots of information, but a deep dive on one particular object. And if you're on an object page, you can also drill down and click on something else within that object page, and it takes you down a level to another object page. So here you've seen list report, object page, overview page. Those are the real foundations of Fiori Elements. We also have a couple of specialized types. There's a work list page and an analytical list page. And you would imagine those do exactly what you would expect. And the navigation is built in, as I said, so we can go back up the tree to our high-level overview page here, and furthermore, back to the Launchpad if we wanted to jump into another app. So with that, let's get into the presentation. And SAP Fiori Elements is built on top of SAP UI5. So SAP UI5 is a HTML5 framework that gives you the ability to write an app once and run it across different browsers. It gives you all the different controls that you need. A control is just an object that appears on the screen. So these are all different types of controls that might appear on the screen, and UI5 gives you that. The other thing that the UI5 framework gives you is the Fiori 3 styling right out of the box. So you can see my upper left and lower right quadrants here. These all come out with the Fiori 3 styling. And UI5 freestyle apps also give you the ability to do anything else. So you can see here, these are some apps that are not necessarily Fiori 3, but you can build whatever you want. Fiori Elements, on the other hand, is going to be strictly giving you that Fiori look and feel. And if you recall Sapphire last year, where most of the demos were Fiori 3. We were able to make that transition fairly quickly without having to rewrite every app, because all you do is change one parameter in your Fiori Elements app, and that changes the theming, and we went from Fiori 2 to Fiori 3. That's another
Peter?
nice benefit of Fiori Element, is that
Hey,
you,
Peter?
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting. We do have a couple questions when
Okay.
you want to take them here. We're trying to get these kind of woven in here. So one of the first questions here is it possible to develop Fiori elements-based applications with a non-ABAP-based back end? And is there any standard readily available Java, Node.js, OData library which exposes this annotation and OData?
Stefan, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah. So maybe should we part this question, because we have then later on a quick introduction. What is Fiori Elements, how it works, and it will be part of this introduction anyhow.
Okay, and then Peter asked one, actually, Peter Raskin asked one from the audience as well. He basically said two quick questions. Of the S4 migrations to date, what percentage have basically been technical in nature, e.g. they're not adopting Fiori broadly and still running SAP GUI, and in those situations, what seem to be the key reasons that IT leadership does not do a transformation S4 migration? Peter, we may ask you.
Do we want to take those now, or they're not specific to Fiori Elements? I don't know, Eugen, you want to?
Yeah, I would say let's take them offline. Like we can talk to Peter maybe offline, because it's not Fiori Elements related. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, Peter. Yeah, I know you have to go, so I apologize for jumping in with that, guys, and we'll answer you later, Peter. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. So back to SAP UI5 as a foundation. It's not just the technology, it's really a very broad, just move some windows out of the way here. It's really a whole broad ecosystem. So SAP UI5 is woven into a number of products and solutions that SAP ships. SAP S/4HANA, SuccessFactors, that Fiori look and feel. We have a whole bunch of tooling designed around building SAP UI5 apps. So SAP Web IDE, which is going to be replaced with SAP Business Application Studio. We've got Fiori Elements and Fiori Tools, some UI5 adaptation, and as I said, it runs everywhere, and we've got a number of resources available to learn more about SAP UI5 if you're interested, and we'll have a poll at the end if people want a deep dive onto everything around SAP UI5. So moving forward onto Fiori Elements specifically, as I said, we're really focused on a couple of key areas in terms of the value that it provides. One is that it really gives us a great development efficiency. By starting with a standard page type, you don't need to recreate that code or copy and paste. It's a template. The app itself is generated at runtime. So we've got the framework. You point to a backend OData service, and Fiori Elements brings these together and renders the app at runtime. And so from a development standpoint, most of your time you spend getting the OData service and the backend ready, and there's very little UI coding that you need to do. If you want some additional functionality in the app, and we're going to show this later, you do something what's called an annotation, and that defines how things appear in the app or defines relationships among the data elements. So all the UI stuff is done for you, and you don't need to worry about that. Just get the OData service running and you're set. With S/4HANA, most of those OData services are coming out of the box. If you're on ECC, you would need to create those, and we've got a number of tools that allow you to do that. On the consistency side, the specification gives you one, consistency across different apps. The forward compatibility, as I mentioned, as we went from SAP Fiori 2 to Fiori 3, one parameter, and then you got that. If you did that app yourself and hand coded it, that would instead, you'd have to rewrite the theming and such to give the app the look and feel that you wanted. And by using this templated approach, it really allows you to scale very quickly. And we use this ourselves at SAP because it's very powerful, it's very easy, and it really gives the developers a chance to flex their creativity in ways other than just lining things up in the UI, but coming up with ways to display the data and make apps more usable. As I showed you earlier, we have the overview page, the list report and object page. These are really the main building blocks of Fiori elements. This is an example of a work list page, which does not have the filtering and the search at the top, so a little more simple way to display it. And an analytical list page, you can see the list page, the list part on the bottom, and some analytics at the top, just a way to display that and make it a little bit easier to understand what the data is showing you without having to do all the scrolling. As you saw in the app, in the short demo, Fiori Elements gives you the navigation out of the box, so you don't need to write the links. We have some tooling, and Stefan will show you how you get from one part of the app to the next. The search is up there, filtering, editing. So really a lot of out-of-the-box capability with Fiori Elements that saves you the time of having to code that yourself. And we already showed you the demo. We led with that up front. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stefan to talk a little bit about how does Fiori Elements combine the different pieces together.
So maybe before we hand over to Stefan, are there any questions to Peter and what you just saw from his presentation or his slides? And by the way, there are a few questions like if it's non-Fiori Elements related, feel free to, we can either cover them offline. So just send us an email. I can actually I will post Keith's and my email so that you can reach out to us offline. And if it's Fiori Elements related or Fiori Tools related, then please raise it right away here. But if there's no questions right away, then Stefan, tee it off from here. And I think Stefan just might have frozen.
Oh, we just actually got another question here before we dive in, which is it possible to embed custom UI5 apps into Fiori Elements?
It is possible to add extensions to your applications. So you start with the format and then you can add whatever code you want to your Elements app. Of course, the more out of the box functionality you take, the more of those benefits of standardization you get. The more you extend it, you can extend it as much as you want, but at a certain point, you might be better off just starting with a freestyle app and not using the Fiori Elements framework. So Stefan, you're on for the slide.
Yeah. So when you build a normal UI5 application and you want to build such a view like you see here, so on the top, so it's an object page with a form and a chart. So it's like you create a view, you add a form control to the view, you add a couple of form elements and so on to it. And you need to take care of setting all the properties on the alignments, so the form alignments and so on. So this is the normal way how you create such a screen. And when then e.g. UI design guidelines change, there might be new controls. For example, there's a new fancier chart control. You need to change your app and or you should change your app, you should improve it to use the latest innovations. So that's of course a one-time effort and also then maintenance effort. Also when there are bugs, for example. So in Fiori Elements, it works a bit differently. So there, you as an app developer, this is on the right side, on the bottom, you basically offer the business data, so as an OData service. So this is a standardized format from mainly Microsoft and SAP. So you offer this business data in an OData service, and you tell the UI what it should do. So it should take, for example, such a list report, which Peter showed, and it should show such an object page. And on this object page, you don't put a form control on it and a chart control and so on, but you just tell, okay, first I want to have a form. I want to have this and that field in there. I want to then have a chart. This is that dimension. This is the measure. It should be a bar chart, and that's it. So you don't need to handle controls or routing or state handling, navigation handling, and all these things which Peter partly mentioned already. But this is taken care of the framework of Fiori Elements. So it's basically a generic implementation for a list report, object page, and so on. And you then tell, for example, you want to have this chart, and we then choose which control to use. We do all the data bindings, the data fetching, and so on, and take care that it's properly shown. Like this, we can also do then things like, for example, functional requirements, so that we offer, for example, that you can only show a rating as a figure, but that you can also use a rating indicator control from UI5. Or the non-functional requirements, for example, we take care of accessibility testing or of performance improvements. Like, for example, we did a lazy loading on the object page, and from one UI5 release to the next one, the performance of all the object pages using Fiori Elements was very much improved, because we just load the first few sections which the user sees, and then only when he scrolls down, we load additional data. And so for you as an app developer, there was zero effort that came for free. All right. So, and the one important thing is how you can tell the template what it should show. So a piece of it is in the app description. So this is the manifest JSON. If you know UI5, so it's basically a configuration file, and there you tell, I want to, for example, have a list report for product, and then I want to have a object page for a product, and then a couple of other app configurations, and all the data you want to see on it. So this is specified in so-called annotations. Can you go one slide ahead, Peter, please? Yeah, and so these annotations then in an abstract way tell, okay, this entity here in the screen, so it's a product, this is creatable or this is updatable. So, and when we get told that it's updatable, we just show the edit button here on the top right, and we offer all the editing capabilities. So when the user hits edit, so either if it's a draft enabled service or a standard OData service, we just do the necessary data fetching. We switch all the fields here you see in the details section to input fields and so on. Take care of such validations, because we, for example, know that it is a currency, offering value helps, and so on. And so this is these behavior things, and also then the structures which you see there. So like the details form group. So basically the app developer told us, okay, we want to have a form group as first section in the page, and this should be the title. So it should be details. And the first thing should be the product name, the second, the model version, the third one, the brand, and so on. And we then take care of which form control to use, which label, which input field or which text field here to, for example, here show a link for an email address. So you can not only define structures like here's such a form group or like a what should be in a table, but you can also tell, okay, this particular field is an email address or this is a phone number, and then we can format it accordingly. For example, show here, make it a link here with the mail to URL so that the user just can click on it and open it. Or in the header, for example, what is the title of the product and what should be the subtitle?
So Stefan, we have a question with regards to, for example, if I want to add a button on top of Fiori elements already to, for example, add a document like an object page, so to say, for example, for an order. Can that be done on top of the Fiori elements rendered page? Yeah, so we will see a little later. So there's then the topic of extensions. So this is the one possibility. So maybe you have a very special functionality. So you can have a button on various places in table toolbars, in form toolbars, in the header here on the object page. So either you can use an extension, or there's also the possibility. So in OData version 2, we have function imports in version 4 actions, for example, where you can also do data operations. And for this, you don't need to code something in the UI. You just tell, okay, I want to have an action for example, I want to retire this product. So that you add a function which then sets some things in the backend to retire it. And then you just tell, okay, I want to have this button here, for example, next to the edit button. And then you can have your additional functionality in there. So Peter mentioned the forward compatibility. What happens if I sort of say make these adjustments or like this customizing for myself? What happens with forward compatibility? Is it still sort of say future ready? Yes. So that's also one thing. So what you started your app development in a certain UI5 version, and so for every upgrade we check that everything still works. So you can upgrade your UI5 version and everything still works out of the box, and you get additional features, additional improvements, things like Fiori free theming, so that came fully out of the box. So yeah. And to answer the question we had earlier, so because there was this question like Node.js and Java and annotations. So basically Fiori elements, so from a data service perspective, is completely independent of the backend technology. So the main use case is, of course, as S/4HANA is the biggest customer of it, that there is an ABAP system in the back. So you define there an OData service. You usually in S/4HANA using core data service views, putting the annotations directly in the core data service views or in metadata extensions there, and then everything comes out of the box from the back end. You will also see in the demo in a minute how this then will look like. And there's also but eventually this format is just OData, and the annotations are just XML, and I will also show this later. And so this can be basically exposed by every backend. So if you are a Java developer, you could use Apache or Lingo to expose an OData service. So, and what SAP is currently heavily working on is the cloud application programming model. So there is one variant for Node.js and one variant for Java. And this makes it also very easy to expose a service. So what Peter mentioned earlier, this app, which was created in basically 24 hours for getting Germans back from all over the world,
So this was done with this CAP Node.js. So CAP is the abbreviation for Cloud Application Programming Model. And so there you can also easily add these annotations. In the Java version, it's the same. But even if your backend only is able to offer OData, you still can just put all the annotations into the app as an XML. And we also have a tooling in the web IDE for this, and also in the upcoming Business Application Studio, Fiori tools. There's also a tooling for this.
So Stefan, another question before we jump into your demo. There was a question around if Elements is also applicable to SAP fundamentals, especially with regards to React.
No. So what we do is we have this framework is implemented in SAP UI5, and it's included in SAP UI5. So React is currently not supported, or we don't support React yet.
Do you have any recommendation for colleagues and people who would like to use React?
Yes, that's a good turnover. So can you go one slide to the next slide, Peter? So because Peter saw this question maybe because he added this slide here. So they're basically with this regards 3 ways. So the React thing would be I would not use So the fundamentals are of course also valid, but what UI5 is currently doing, they're wrapping a lot of their controls in web components. So in fundamentals, you just have HTML and CSS. So it means, for example, a date picker should be a bit smarter, so that you can also enter today, and the date picker understands, okay, today is the the 7th of April, and other things like more features. So, and this fundamentals doesn't have, because it's just pure HTML, CSS, a little bit JavaScript maybe, and here the UI5 web components basically offer a lot of the capabilities of the very nice UI5 controls. So they are very feature rich. They wrap it in a web component. So web components can be used in every web project, be it React, Angular, Vue.js, whatever. You can check out the GitHub page from SAP. There are also, or from the UI5 web components, there are also a couple of examples how you can, for example, use it with React. Yeah. So this is basically when you want to use a different JavaScript framework. Then the freestyle apps Peter mentioned, this would then be the SAP UI5 Open UI5 way. And if you want, if your use case fits to the capabilities we have in Fiori Elements, then it's obviously a good way to make it an efficient development project. So our experienced S4HANA developers in S4, they can build such an app in an afternoon. So back-end wise and front-end wise. So when in the beginning you need a bit to get into it, but then the more you will use it, the quicker you will be. And with regards to the UI5 and Fiori Elements comparison, we also have another slide. Yes. So there you see that's a little bit a comparison freestyle development of UI5 and Fiori Elements. So basically, the most important thing is it's flexibility versus efficiency. So in Fiori Elements, as mentioned, so we really want to get all these efficiency things, so that we don't implement the table the thousandth time in S4HANA, for example. And whereas it's not also the silver bullet, there are also always use cases where you need flexibility, be it design flexibility, or be it features, functional features, non-functional features, where Fiori Elements is just not covering it. The development knowledge is also an interesting point, because when you create freestyle UI5 applications, you of course need to have a developer who is capable of writing JavaScript code. In the Fiori Elements case, that's also what we often get as feedback from customers. So also an ABAP workforce can easily build such apps which still look beautiful, although they may be not the design experts, but as they just tell, okay, I want to have a form, I want to have this chart and this table, and I want to have these fields in there. Fiori Elements takes care of it, so all looks nice. Yeah, and the costs are of course higher in the freestyle development, and lower in Fiori Elements. Whereas, as mentioned in the beginning, you need a little until you get into it. So until you got how it works and how to achieve it. But then with every app you will get faster. Good.
So looking at the time here, let's switch over to the demo.
Yes.
I think that'll be perhaps the last thing we do, but it's important that we get to that.
Then let me quickly launch the poll for the topic for next week, because it seems like that the poll is a little bit delayed. And while Stefan is firing up the demo, I'm firing up the poll, and then.
So should I? I'll stop sharing here.
I already stopped your sharing.
Thank you.
All right. So we are working on the Fiori tool suite, and so this will run in SAP Business Application Studio, which is basically the successor of Web IDE, and also in Visual Studio Code. And I'm now show you how I create a project, a new app with it. I have already prepared an OData service from an ABAP system. On the ABAP system, there are already annotations maintained, so this what should be shown. And so I could either use the standard way in Visual Studio Code, or like here, or I could also go via the extensions. So basically, we offer here a couple of extensions, and one is the application generator, which we need first. So here, similarly like in Web IDE, we choose what we want to do. So in this case, I want to create a list report object page app for OData v2. Then I need to know the service URL. So I enter it here and enter my credentials. All right, so then I can choose the entity which I want to have on my list report and on my object page. And so it's basically the same like in what we have in Web IDE at the moment. So here it saw that that product seems to be the main entity of this service and pre-selected this. Then I need to enter a name. I could also enter an app title, a namespace. That's not so necessary. I select a folder where it should be stored for now. And then that's it. So now the application gets generated. And that's it already. So I could already start it now. So here you see the application, and what you will see is there are no views and no controllers in here, because these things are loaded from SAP UI5 from Fiori Elements, and whenever we then just add new features or fix something, do improvements, and you upgrade your UI5 version, and then it will just always grab it from there. Okay, so I can just start it. So what you haven't seen, it now opened in my browser. And I need to pull the browser here. All right, and so in these, I don't know, 50 seconds or so, how long it took, I already have now here a fully functioning list report with some filter fields here on top, with different columns, visualizations, and all this is coming from the annotations. It's basically very much the same like Peter showed earlier. So you see also the chart is there. And now I want to do some quick improvements. So one thing we offer is the so-called guided development. So for example, my customer wants me to add the Excel export to the list report. So you see it's not there. So okay, so now I need to go to the documentation, check how this could be done, but not in this case anymore. So I can just search here for Excel. Okay, here's enable table data export. Yes, this is the feature my customer wants. And then you see here the description, how it's done. And I can just hit the apply button. So it will edit here. I go back to my preview. So it automatically updates or reloads because I changed something. And this looks good. So the Excel export is here.
So you were able to add that button without having to write any code. The code was injected automatically for you, right?
Exactly. And another thing, I have the reviews here. I want to have a detailed page here like Peter had before. So, okay, so it's not clickable yet. So, okay, how can we do this? So there's another tool, the page map. And so here you see our structure currently looks like this, list report object page. I can add here another object page underneath. So I know it's the collaborative review posts. And then I can just edit and save. And then it reloads again automatically. And there will be then this small arrow on the right side of the table rows, which indicates that I can navigate from here. Yes, it's here. So do we have a minute left?
Sure.
Okay, because then maybe you know there's this there was in the beginning in Fiori 1 there was this master detail pattern which was then succeeded by the flexible column layout. So this is basically this one here, 3 columns. So in your freestyle app, it might take you a couple of days to implement this properly. So here I just see, okay, this is how it's done. So here the apply is not yet fully working, but I have here the explanation how I can do it. So I can just go into the app configuration and I can edit here, then reload my page, and then you will see we have the flexible column layout also in our app. And here it is. So we have the list on the side and the object key page here, and we can have here up to 3 columns. All right, that's it for the demo.
All right, maybe we should turn it back over to Eugen and Keith to wrap things up for the day.
Yeah, Peter, can you keep sharing your presentation because the poll, for whatever reason, doesn't work properly today?
Yeah.
Then I need the
So,
topics.
and in the meantime, we actually have a question from Alvin. He said, just to get some clarification, if I understand correctly, SAP Fiori tools and elements generate both the list and object page views purely from annotations on the OData, which I'm assuming based on associations to the main OData.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, so what you saw with this, I mean, the first page was the product, the detail page about the product, and then there was an association to this review posts, and as there was this association maintained, we had a navigation property in the metadata, and the navigation properties from the product were basically shown in this page map editor. And the rest is then just that this code gets then generated in the manifest and that this page should be added, and then it works.
Cool. Igor, you raised your hand to ask a question. Feel free, you can do it via audio if you wish, or.
Yes, guys. I mean, we're still adding the code and we still have to control the code. So why can't we have it one day configurable like we used to have it in SQ01? You just click it together what you need, your columns together, and you just say what you want to have as a selection criteria, and then you set up your layout. Something configurable like this, why do we still always have to add the code?
So, I mean, we can, so with the Fiori tools, we offer here a first set of tooling, which makes it easier for the developer. I mean, eventually, also something like this could be possible. So I don't know SQ01, but what you told this, I mean, if we enhance the tools, we could also reach such a point. The question if all the developers need this, or if they're well, what is the best way for them then?
I mean, the problem is once you start adding the code, you're always risking to mess up something, right? So everything, someone gonna type something wrong, forget the semicolon or forget the comma, and you're pretty much done, right? So if we make it more configurable and say, okay, you don't touch this part of the code, it's gonna get generated automatically by configuration. We minimize the risk, and we don't have to have a skilled professionals that have to understand every line of code, right? So if you tell them, I want to add this capability, and this capability, or I don't want to have it. It's like,
okay,
why
but
not make
I mean,
it configurable?
Hey, Fiori Tools is doing some of that for you. You'll notice when Stefan added the download to Excel button, he didn't type anything. He typed in, okay, I want the Excel button, and then that's it. There are other things that are a little more configurable. If you wanted to add a control, you would navigate to the different fields within, and we don't have time to demo that today, but you would navigate to the fields. I think when Stefan added the additional object page, he didn't type in that long string. He clicked on it, and then that was added to the navigation in there. So there is a lot of that, which eliminates the typing. And yes, a lot of times one character off and the application doesn't work. But we're really trying to minimize that. I think the target audience of Fiori Elements and Fiori Tools are skilled developers, but maybe they can be a little bit less skilled, and they're certainly going to be a lot faster than they would if they had to key in that and QA. One thing we didn't talk about that Fiori Elements gives you is streamlined QA testing. Since a lot of it is done and everything looks the same, you can have automated testing that knows exactly what to do because it's generally going to be the same for the non-custom objects that you have.
Thank you.
Sure.
So regarding the question from Todor Petrov, so so the goal is that everything works exactly the same way in Business Application Studio. So they also support the Visual Studio Code plugins. Yeah. And Peter, do you want to reply to the last question? I think
this, I think we kind of need to wrap because we're at the top of the hour. So there are some resources available. There's a newsletter. The links for this are in the chat log. 3 things to remember: accelerating, consistency, and good coverage. So over to Eugen to figure out what we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah, so unfortunately the poll doesn't work, so we have to do it manually in the chat. We have 5 topics that we would like to offer you, plus freestyle. If you have a 6th, 7th, or 8th topic, type it in. We are free to any suggestion. We said like today you got like a high-level introduction into Fiori elements and Fiori tools. So if you actually want to deep dive into more technical things around Fiori elements and Fiori tools, we are happy to do that. We would like to offer you Fiori Mobile as one option of one of the topics for next week. Fiori Launchpad, everything around the Fiori design system, especially with a focus on Fiori 3, our latest so to say version of the design system, or if you have any questions regarding SAP UI5. And I see there's quite some interest for a deep dive on Fiori elements. Actually, I see like a lot of topics, like actually we hit, I think, a good list with these 5. As I said, like feel free to add any topics if you don't see the one that you are most interested in. Because as I said, we want to make it interactive. We want to make it short. We want to make sure that you actually have the answers to what interests you most. And we are also happy for any feedback regarding the style of the session. Less presentations, more conversations, more Q&A. Happy to adjust the format as we go.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I'm also putting our email into the chat. So Eugen, and we can certainly reach out to Peter and Stefan, and thanks to Peter and Stefan for your presentation today, you know, with any further questions that you have. So let us know, right? We're really interested in hearing from you.
Yeah. And seeing from the answers that we're getting today, we might see you next week again, the 2 of you.
All right, that sounds great.
I hope by that time, Peter will sit at the beach.
Hopefully,
we'll
yeah.
What we can do.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
See you next week, and we will do a deep dive on Fiori elements and Fiori tools then, based on from what I saw. And we will see Stefan and Peter again.
What?
Great.
Great.
Thank you, and
Thanks.
talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.